Adam, good to catch up with you during the bye week, and this is our one day of media access. We got the coordinators today, and it's kind of the nice thing about the two bye weeks is we've gotten the coordinators, and always good to catch up with those guys and just kind of get their thoughts on how basically the last segment or the previous segment of football.
And a lot of positive momentum for the program. So a lot of positive questions about kind of where they're at as a program. So you know that when they come back from this bye week, there's going to have to kind of be this reprogramming of you guys really haven't accomplished anything because you want to get to the finish line and accomplish the ultimate goals. They've reached that first one, obviously a bowl eligibility, but generally pretty positive. I think CU fans have fallen in love with Robert Livingston these past 8 games because he has adjusted better than we've seen from a defensive coordinator since it was really that Levitt-Tumpkin kind of combo in 2016. And you can tell when he talks to us that he's so quick to kind of process things in his mind and respond. And so I think that's just kind of a skill set he has, is that he's really good at that. And I asked him about George Hilo, who's been kind of his eyes up in the press box, and that's kind of an unsung hero for this football team. I'll be honest with you, when Hilo joined this program, it seemed like it was kind of late to have as big an impact as he has, and so that's a credit to him and kind of his football acumen. But the best skill this defensive staff has had is being able to relay that knowledge that they have onto the players and not have them thinking too fast defensively, thinking too much defensively,
right.
Allowing to play fast.
Yeah, I agree with you. And obviously he was asked about the pass rush has been coming on in recent weeks, and he mentioned those guys, the versatility they have there. But he also gave credit to the interior. He said a lot of people see the sacks that are coming from the outside, but those guys like Chidozie and Shane Cokes and Amari McNeil, who he mentioned, are really getting some nice push.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and it's kind of crazy how much better these coordinators look when the trenches are playing well, right? Yeah. I mean, there were maybe some murmurs about Pat Shurmur maybe, was struggling at times, and I think you'd have to go really all the way back to the second game, the first half of that, but they weren't blocking anybody back then.
Yeah.
Now they are, and look how good of an offensive coordinator Pat Shurmur looks, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's certainly better when you have good players. And sticking with defense real quick, Robert Livingston looks really good when Travis Hunter is in your secondary. But he also talked about Preston Hodges playing really well, DJ McKinney, and that secondary is just really coming on and playing some good football.
Yeah, Colton Hood as well, and that's been elite level cornerback play. And again, the comparisons with 2016 continue. There were 4 NFL guys at cornerback on that team. There are 4 NFL guys on this team at that position, and maybe more. There's some younger guys that are still developing, but those 4 guys, I mean, they jump off the page as NFL guys. And to me, even early on, Carter Stoudemire looked that way on the back end of the secondary. Now he's playing safety, but so there's a lot of talent, and that allows Robert Livingston to call a game much different than if you're having to play zone coverage all the time, right?
Yeah, for sure. And you talk about Robert Livingston, and Buff fans have kind of fallen in love with him. I think that on the other side, they're starting to warm up to Pat Shurmur, right? And it just seemed like really from the start of when he was made the OC, it was because a lot of Buff fans are Bronco fans as well. They're scarred from those Broncos years and when things didn't go well. But I think people are starting to warm up a little bit to Pat Shurmur, and we're seeing his offense refine and evolve. To take a question from our colleague Matt Smith today that Pat Shurmur loved. But he's really doing a nice job as this season goes along with that offense.
Yeah, because I don't follow the NFL and cover that all that closely. Yeah. When somebody tells me about an offensive coordinator that struggled here or there, I always ask, who is the quarterback?
Right.
And that's usually a pretty good answer. And so, especially in the NFL, and even at this level to a large extent as well, you're going to be able to look really good as an offensive coordinator if you've got a quarterback. And he's got that here, obviously. Sean Lewis did last year, though, too, but his system and just his connection with Shedeur didn't match up well. So that's a credit to Pat Shurmur that they've been able to mesh this special relationship. And now it's really, I know it wasn't his offense the last 4 games of last season, but this is now 12 games that they've had together. And I do think you see a little bit of continued continuity with the play calling in Shedeur, who obviously has a lot of free range at the line of scrimmage to change things up and make decisions on his own accord. But that relationship has worked out well. But it's really the offensive line that, has allowed people to appreciate him and he was great in the media scrum today. Hopefully, I think it was about 12 minutes he talked.
Even longer than that. Yeah.
And you know that watching that, how insightful he is and how much thought goes into everything. And so both of these coordinators seem to be rejuvenated by being around kind of a younger group of athlete.
Yeah, and you mentioned the offensive line. I mean, that group has just gotten better, and because of that, they're able to run the football. And Coach Shermer said, "Hey, don't get me wrong, I love throwing the football, but you have to run it if you're going to be successful." They're now able to do that, and he talked about that's so much comfort as a play caller knowing I can run the ball here and get a first down.
Maybe the best thing that happened to this team was it minus 27 rushing yards, 29 against Kansas State, because we saw through well-off media that following week, Pat Shermer step up and basically say enough is enough.
Right.
We are going to run the football.
Yeah.
And so I felt like there was this – they were trying to run the football earlier, not as consistently as most analysts and fans out there wanted to.
Right.
But you saw going into that Arizona game that enough is enough. We are going to do this. And it's worked out. 148 yards. What was it, 120-something?
123, I think.
123 last week. So – when you have Shedeur Sanders and the talent they have at receiver, just get in that 120 to 148 range, and your offense is going to be very successful.
Yeah, and you look at the defenses coming up, and now Pat Shermer does, like he did say, we like to go one at a time because we need to just focus on where we're at. But I don't have to do that. But you look at the defenses coming up, there's some opportunities to run the football in the last month as well. So, Utah might be that toughest one, but Utah's not the same as what they've been. So there's opportunities to keep this going, and I think that the Buffs are building some momentum.
That's all you want to see is the last 2 weeks in those final 4 games, because if they play at that level, they will be 10-2, Brian, when the season ends.
Right.
But, it's tough. You're dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds, and there are a lot of pats on the back that they're going to get, and as long as they keep winning. So there's that mental side of it that you're kind of battling as a coaching staff, and that's why Coach Prime, and I think he was half jokingly saying this, don't vote for us in the AP, because it's just easier for them to motivate these guys if the lack of respect out there continues against them. This very well could be a 10-2 team. They just have to replicate what they did the last 2 weeks. Obviously easier said than done, because they're going to be favored in all those games, but those teams have some pretty good players too, and they're going to be trying to win as well.
Yeah. And I also tweeted after the game, I apologize to Coach Prime that, hey, I put you in my top 25. So did a lot of people. That's why they're number 23 this week. And one last thing before we get out of here, I'm enjoying the bye week. Are you enjoying it?
I'm just trying to get everything done that I put off in the non-bye weeks. But, I felt like for this football team, the first bye week was a lot mental. Yeah. Because you talk about the summer grind, going through camp, 5 games to start the season, kind of get that break. I think for the football team, this is probably more of a physical break, right? Mm-hmm. Shedeur being on that list. Yeah. For media, I'm just not used to 2 bye weeks, so I've got to figure out what to do aside from handling some of those tasks that I've put up. But I wish they would do this every year, because I think it gives everybody a break. I'm sure on Saturday there's going to be a part of everybody that's a Colorado supporter that's like missing the fact the Buffs are playing, but it's such a long off season, such a quick season, to just be able to stretch it out just a little bit. I'm all for.
Well, and I will say this. And again, going against what Pat Shermer says, I'm looking ahead. But looking ahead to what could be, when you're talking about potentially a Big 12 title game, maybe a Heisman ceremony, maybe a college football playoff and bowl game, starting next week, it's going to just be intense for about a month and a half, 2 months, signing day, things like that. So I am grateful for this week and need to enjoy it. And so, Adam and I will be back next week to talk about Texas Tech.